judges are ready to hear your solution. You have 20 minutes to present to the judges. You will be given a warning when 5 and 2 minutes remain. After 20 minutes, the presentation will be stopped immediately. No information will be considered after the time is lapsed. Following the presentation, there will be a 10-minute question and answer. You will be given a warning when 2 minutes remain. You may begin when you're ready.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming out this Saturday afternoon to hear us. We are Team Alpha, and here's our presentation. So, I want to start to set the stage by asking this question. What's happening? What's happening in the U.S. that is concerning Edward Jones and other financial advisory firms? And we want to start from this number, that is $30 trillion. Now, what does that number mean? That number represents the amount that the millennials will inherit from their parents, Generation X, and the baby boomers. And where is that money going to go? Well, 66% of their children will fire their parents' financial advisor after they receive an inheritance, and that's $20 trillion. Now, that's just the millennials generation change alone. Now, let's kind of shift our gear and talk about the racial demographic change in the U.S. By 2015, the current minority population will surpass that of the white in the U.S. Especially Asian and Hispanic American population is projected to grow over twofold. What does that mean for the financial advisory industry? Well, let's again look at some numbers. The mean wealth of top 20 African American households have, on average, $400,000. Asian American households, over $1 million. Hispanic American households, again, $400,000. Now, if we have that number, multiply that by the number of households, multiply that by the projected growth rate of each of the segment, that comes out to be $4.7 trillion. Now, that's almost $25 trillion due to these two aspects of social change. And we have to kind of recognize that we're neglecting a lot of other sides of social changes, such as growing LGBTQ community, as well as growing unconventional, non-traditional households, right? So we're only considering these two aspects, and still $25 trillion. And now, how we can, the financial advisory industry, as well as Edward Jones, can exploit this kind of opportunity and be ready for this kind of opportunity in the future. And we thought to ourselves that this is the best question to ask. What is the current problem? What kind of problems does the financial industry, advisory industry face currently? Well, can we actually speak their language? Can the financial advisors speak the language? Well, as you can see here, only 5% of the financial advisors in the industry are less than 30 years old. 21% are less than 40 years old. And Edward Jones is not an exception to that. And why is this important? Because we need to, the advisors it's necessary for them to communicate and empathize with the millennials, checking upon their career goals, checking upon their life goals. Hey, can your earning make your dream come true? So they need to be able to empathize with the millennials, and it is really important, crucial for them to speak the language of the millennials. Now, we kind of blame the technology of kind of sapping humans' job away, and it is naively true because of the automation and possibly very intelligent artificial or machine learning algorithm. However, if you really look at why the millennials are switching their advisors, the reasons are not that surprising. It's more of a dull moment. Obviously, they're disappointed at their advisors because they're not proactively reaching out to them. They're not responding to emails. They're not responding to calls, right? So all these things, what Edward Jones is really excelling at, by putting the client first, it can be remedied by the great culture that Edward Jones had, right? With some mix of technology and be able to speak some of the millennial languages, we really believe that Edward Jones can actually exploit all these great opportunities that's coming in the future. And the millennials do value convenience, and they love technology, they love their phones. However, they still value the personal relationship that they're getting from the service, and especially in financial advisory industry. Now, let's talk about the race. It turns out that financial advisory industry is one of the most non-diverse industry in the US. About 79% of the advisors are white, and only 21% are non-white. Edward Jones is not an exception to that as well. Only 11% of Edward Jones advisors are non-white. And why is this, again, important? Keep asking the question. We asked the questions to this non-white financial advisors? Do you think there's a lot of opportunity out there that is being untapped because the financial advisory is dominantly white? And the answer is yes. African American advisors said, almost 90% said, strongly agree or agree with that statement above. Asians and Hispanic Americans also said yes to that statement. Now we are at this point, and we're thinking, okay, how can Edward Jones, take specific steps to exploit all this opportunity when they have great potential, built upon great firm culture? And that's where Valentina will take over.
Thank you very much, Robin. So, as Robin said, in order to really solve the issues, to solve the problems that the industry currently is facing, Edward Jones, we strongly believe, should really understand how to attract, engage, as well as retain the new generation of clients. So as we already know, as we are all well aware of course, Edward Jones is a company operating in financial services industry. And Edward Jones already has many great strengths. For example, its corporate culture is famous for putting their clients first. They're really focusing on their clients, they're building very personal relationships with them. And in order to do that, they're already offering great training programs where they teach their employees how to build personal relationships with clients, but not only that, they also teach them how to offer very customized, very tailored advice to each client. Also, interesting, we believe it is interesting that Edward Jones also offers to some extent an entrepreneurial work environment, meaning that like in each of their branches, there is one person who is not only responsible for being the main financial advisor, but he or she is also responsible for basically taking care of everything that is going on in this branch. So in a way, this person is acting as a CEO of this particular branch. And we believe that this startup spirit is something that could be really attractive to millennials if we know how to utilize it. And then, unfortunately, Edward Jones is facing some weaknesses as well, which are similar to the weaknesses across the whole financial industry. Like Robin was saying, there is lack of millennial advisors, there is lack of ethnically diverse advisors, and there is lack of technology which would allow Edward Jones to compete with fintech companies such as, for example, Robin. So in order to solve the problems that the industry is facing, as well as utilize on the strengths that Edward Jones already has, as well as overcome the weaknesses, we build this decision criteria. We really believe that our solution should lead to 4 different things. So first of all, we believe that our solution should maintain the existing corporate culture as well as the existing values that Edward Jones has. Also, we believe that with our solution, we should absorb a diverse group of clients, meaning clients from ethnic backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, meaning clients from non-traditional households. But not only that, we should focus on all the millennial clients in general and absorb them. And then lastly, of course, our solution should lead to sustainable payoff as well as profit maximization in the long run. So in order, so once we had our decision criteria defined, we also defined 4 different alternatives, which all to some extent fulfill our decision criteria. So our first alternative is attracting talented financial advisors, as we really believe that in order to attract new generation of clients, we also have to have a new generation of advisors. Then our second alternative is expanding product offerings. So based on research, millennials really care about the social impact of companies they're investing into. So we believe that there is some room for improvement when it comes to product offerings that Edward Jones is offering, such as sustainable funds, green funds, and so on. And then our third alternative is developing technological capability, things like app development, in order to be finally able to effectively compete with fintech. And then lastly, our fourth alternative is utilizing social media by using content marketing, not only to market our products, but also to educate our clients, potential clients, about financial industry and about different financial terminologies, let's say, because based on research, millennials really lack knowledge when it comes to finance and the areas of finance. So once we compared these 4 alternatives against our decision criteria, we saw that only the first alternative, so attracting talented financial advisors, actually fulfills all the decision criteria. However, this is not to say that other alternatives are bad and we should just forget about them. Whereas we believe that right now our priority is this, attracting talented financial advisors, and then in the long run, if they have time, if they have resources, Edward Jones should of course focus on all the alternatives as well. So then, when we have our solution, we believe that the next logical question that should be asked is how should Edward Jones implement this solution? What should be done? Basically, which steps are needed to attract, engage, as well as retain diverse workforce? So there are 3 different steps. In order to attract new hires, we would use social media postings using more non-traditional channels such as LinkedIn and Indeed, where we would post our job offerings. However, these job offerings would be tailored to millennials, tailored to what they want when it comes to job searching. So we would dissociate ourselves from this negative stigma on sales that millennials don't really like, and we would rebrand financial advisors into financial co-creators. Meaning that financial co-creators are not some people who force millennials into investing their money and into buying things. Rather, they're creating their investment portfolio with them, they're giving them advice, they're offering solutions, but at the end they give millennials independence to do whatever they want with their money. And we would actively advertise this in our job postings. And then also we would realign the compensation structure to some extent. For example, based on research, millennials prefer higher initial salaries. So we would advertise that in our job offerings. We would also advertise some leadership summits, which would hopefully attract potential employees from underrepresented populations. And then once we have our new hires considered attractive to us, we would do everything to engage them. And we believe this would not be too hard because, like we said, Edward Jones already has a very good training program. So we would just build upon this program and tailor them more to millennials by doing, for example, consistent touch points, seminars, and feedbacks. And then finally, in the long term, of course, we have to retain these new hires. And this would be done by doing 2 different things. First of all, we would increase collaboration between existing employees and these new co-creators. So they would be able to meet for meetings, discuss ideas, discuss concerns, discuss challenges. The existing employees would be able to offer advice to the co-creators to mentor them. And by making existing employees and new co-creators a team, we would not lose the existing corporate culture. And then second of all, we would also increase client exposure. So because we believe that based on research actually, initial client exposure leads to greater job satisfaction as well as loyalty. So we believe that these 3 steps are really important for our solution to be implemented.
Thank you. So now we have this framework. Now the next question is, how do we direct our time and resources? And how do we develop a concrete implementation plans? And to do so, we need to understand our millennials and also the diversity distributions in the U.S. If you take a look at this map, it represents the percentage of minority shares of of the millennial populations in each of the states. For all of these red areas, the minority shares of the population are more than 50%, which represents the states that are really diverse. And the orange areas have the percentage from 40% to 50%. The yellow areas has percentages from 20% to 40%, and the gray areas has them for less than 20%. We want to start by focusing on those red states because they're more diverse and those are the areas we need to react first. We want to thus propose these 3 phases trial plans. Edward Jones has the goal of having 20,000 financial advisors by 2022. And based on the assumption that we have in the cases that we currently have 13,000 financial advisors, we need to hire 7,000 of them in the span of the next 6 years. We have these 3 phases trials. The first phases is the trial where we want to test in 2 locations in California and Georgia, one in the East Coast and one in the West Coast. Since they're in the different locations, we can compare the culture differences and the impacts for them. We'll implement our human resource recruiting plans and measure the costs and benefits. If it works out, we'll proceed to our expansion plans. In 2019, we'll expand into the states with more than 50% of minority shares of the population. In next year, we'll expand the states of 40 to 50% of minority shares. And in 2021, we'll expand into the states of 20 to 40% of the shares of minority populations. And by 2022, we'll expand into the remaining states and thus completing our recruitment goals. You might wonder how do we calculate all of these numbers here. We actually calculated the percentage of the population in each state and then divided by the total U.S. population and then times 7,000 new financial recruiters. So we prorated them in each of the states and then added them up based on those areas, which is how we got these numbers. This is a plan, but how does it look financially? We did these financial projections over the next 6 years, and the blue areas represent the total expenses, and the green areas represent our net incomes. As you can see, we've seen a sustainable growth in our revenues and net income in the next 6 years. We're actually making a profit in our trial phases. So we believe that this plan will make sense financially. And if you're interested, we can go more into the details after in the Q&A areas about how we calculate those numbers. We also need to consider the potential obstacles and then provide with the contingency plans to make sure that we can smoothly implement our recommendations. The first obstacle is missing out on our higher goals. What if we don't hire, we miss out in the 7,000 new goals? Well, for each year, by the end of the year, we'll compare our milestones with our actual hires and then adjust our compensation packages and recruiting channels accordingly for the next year. The next obstacle is losing millennials to the fintech. But here, once again, I want to emphasize the strength of Edward Jones in providing high quality customer services. And we want to continue to improve our customer convenience by expanding digital services offering as a complement to personal contact. And the last obstacle is failing to attract diverse consumer groups. But our contingency plan is to implement a content-based social media campaign where we will provide individual, customized advertisement to each people based on their races, based on their genders and background.
So, when developing this main strategy, we also considered 3 main alternatives that achieve our criteria of long-term profitability, reaching out to millennials, as well as appealing to a diverse population. So the first alternative we considered was to broaden the product line, and this would be done in terms of socially engaged investment funds. We could also develop a green index. And this is because millennials care about the social impact on the firms. They don't only care about their own investment goals, but also what impact their investment makes on society as a whole. And only 41% of millennials believe that companies do enough to control their social impact. So the second alternative we considered was to develop the existing app and improve the customization and the user friendliness to make millennials take ownership of their own investment decisions. We would outsource this app development, and this would position us well to compete with fintechs. So this is a mock-up of what the app would look like, which is a very easy and user-friendly version of a savings account. You can add $20 to your holiday account, press OK, and you get an instant verification, and you can see how long you are ahead on your investment goal. Our third alternative would be to utilize social media. And we don't use any social media. We need content-based social media, where you would provide tutorials in different social media channels on different topics that comes to retirement funds or other savings options and how they would directly affect millennials. The millennials are often confused about what value financial advice offer, and this would help them engage with them and do research before coming into Edward Jones. It's sort of like a bait, giving them an incentive to come to Edward Jones because they feel they can trust this company. So how would we do this? We would first of all develop the human visuals, but also use humors, because it turns out millennials respond really well to humor. And the future opportunities for this would be using big data to analyze growth opportunities in the long term. So what is Team Alpha's recommendation? Well, although these alternative solutions would be a great idea to implement in the long term, we believe that the main focus and priority for Edward Jones would be to focus on the employee basis and develop human capital that represents the changing demographic trend. So we want to attract young and more ethically diverse financial co-creators, and we want to hire 7,000 people within 2022 as stated in company goals in order to generate $650 $2.4 million in cumulative net income over 5 years. So thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions.
You identified the problem up front, about $25 trillion.
Yes.
Is essentially being potentially adopted in capture. There's a $654 million of additional income that you mentioned in the end. Tied to the $25 trillion, do you hope to capture all of it? Do you hope to capture part of it? What does it back down to?
Right. So obviously, $25 trillion is a lot of money. And when we did some research about the $20 trillion that's going to be, I guess, transferred being one advisor to another advisor, it turns out that about 50% of the people actually spend that money and not going to another, or they invest in themselves. They manage it themselves, or they just go to the other advisor. So obviously, we're only getting a fraction of that amount. And I guess the $25 trillion figure was representing the market, potential market size. And $654 million do tie into it partially, but not necessarily directly in a way that it's a derivative of the $25 trillion.
Question on your projection for revenue and expenses. Can you just tell us how would you come up with that?
Yeah. So we looked into the 10K of Edward Jones and calculated there. We found out the number of financial advisors that we have and the total amount of revenue and expenses we had in 2016. Based on these numbers, we calculated our average revenue and expenses per branch. And also we looked at the trends of how revenue and expenses were growing or decreasing over the years. So the first lines are just like number of new hires and cumulative number of new hires will happen each year if we continue with this expansion plan. And then we assume that the revenues will decrease because we'll follow the trend of decreasing trend for the first 2 years because of the momentum. But then as our new financial co-creators start to learn more about their jobs, they start to attract new millennial clients, we'll expect the revenues to grow in the long run. So we project a positive growth rate of the revenue. And because of the inflation rate, rising interest rate, etc., we expect the relatively small amount of growth in the expenses as well. So if we calculate these numbers accordingly and use an industry WACC of 6%, we projected the present value of our net income to be over $600 million.
So our firm has historically grown organically in number of financial advisors, and so that's through career changers, the folks that are changing from one industry to financial services. So with your solution of attracting more talented financial advisors, is there value in continuing with the way we've historically done it, or do you see value in reaching your end goal by retaining advisors from the competition?
I can answer that. We personally believe that Edward Jones is maintaining a great firm culture, and they should do everything they could to maintain it. Meaning that oftentimes when businesses try to expand exclusively, they often lose their own culture because the talent pool is obviously being diluted. So here, obviously, we're saying that 7,000 people over 6 years, but I know that Mr. mentioned that this year alone that Edward Jones is projected to hire 3,000 personnel in the financial advisory. So obviously this is a very conservative estimation, and we do believe that growing organically to keep that firm culture preserved is a very good way to go.
We talked about going to certain parts of the country and increasing the attention to attracting advisors. Changing the name to co-creators, slightly bigger base salary, is that going to suddenly motivate these new advisors to come and decide to join Edward Jones? I'm kind of wondering what really is going to bring new people to the job.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I think, first of all, we believe that some of the new advisors, like some of the new people will just want to work at Edward Jones actually, because you already have great hiring plans, you already do great things, so I'm sure you attract new graduates, you attract interns, so that's all set. But while doing that, we also implement that just to increase this number. Not necessarily, like this would be just an added value to what you're already having. So in that way, we believe that, yes, this will increase, but of course not an enormous increase. But it will still lead to the net income that Catherine was talking about, and we believe that is.
Because you're assuming that if they go to those places, out of 100 hires, they're already getting a different mix of people, is what you're assuming?
Well, not enough.
Okay.
So we believe that with this, we are actually working towards our goal of hiring more diverse, hiring more ethnically diverse as well.
So the idea is basically we see that people turn away from financial advisors to fintech. So in order to attract and incentivize people to go to financial advisors, we need to in some way reinvent the position and make people, millennials in particular, they want to be engaged in what they're doing, and they to some extent also believe that they can do it as well. This is an attitude we've seen in different surveys. So by rebranding the financial advisor to a co-creator, it makes it more two-sided in terms of that you're sort of changing ideas with your co-creator and more planning ahead of how you're going to make this together rather than going for advice and this financial advisor that's for you. So it's a shared responsibility, and that's what we think will attract millennials.
So I'm glad you went back to the slide. I was actually going to ask you about the training program. So I think in some of your earlier slides you mentioned that we have a pretty robust training program now. Clearly you have to have limited information, but based on what you know of sort of your generation, what do you think could be missing that we should be putting into the training to make it better?
We did research about the current trainees when we do the financial projections. We know that currently when we hire financial advisors, we'll provide them with study materials to study the series 7 and 63. So it's not really costing for the loss of money, which is why we currently project $2,000 per new financial advisor. But we believe in the future when we have trainees, we can not only do that, but also give them the leadership conferences, teach them how to actually actively lead a branch, how to reach out to the clients, how to generate the revenues. Additionally, since Edward Jones really emphasized the partnership and the cooperations between the branches, we can also pair up the new financial co-creators with the old financial advisors to help them to learn from each other.
Is that the mentoring structure you're going
Yes.
Go to the next slide where you're targeting the geographically most diverse.
Yes.
If you looked at where there's wealth concentration in the country, how would that look? Would it be similar? And we are targeting for a financial advisory firm trying to maximize your financial returns. What is the right objective? Is it the diversity of the population, or is it the concentration of wealth?
Yeah, that's a great question. And obviously it should be the concentration of wealth because that's where the client is. And we assuming that since Edward Jones already has 15,000 different financial advisors all over the U.S., we are assuming that they're already covering the very high wealth region of the country. So right now, I guess if we had more time to do this, we'd probably have a map of distribution of different offices of the Edward Jones advisors and kind of put that on the overlay and see where the mismatch is happening. And that's probably the states or regions that Edward Jones should target. So we're looking for mismatch rather than shotgun approach.
We'll ask another question. In terms of the framework for analysis, there's a strategic overall corporate strategy that drives all the other strategies functionally. And you have the marketing strategy that's tied to the corporate strategy. So how would you frame this problem? Would you frame it as the corporate strategy is fine, and what we really need to work on is the marketing strategy and the sales strategy, or you think the corporate strategy itself is really good?
That's a great question. So, so if I'm understanding your question correctly, what you're saying is that should this case be more of a what functionality should be under? Is that?
Well, going back to today the model is building these personal relationships through local contact with the client engagement model, and continue to build on that. This is the company's strategic objective. So the focus becomes what do I do to change my marketing and sales strategy to meet the corporate objective?
Right.
So the essential objective, a strategy are both still valid? And really what needs to be tweaked is the marketing and sales strategy? Or does the corporate strategy stuff that we?
So the corporate strategy as a package of the personal relationships is what we think is a really good concept to have with Edward Jones and what we find is one of the strengths.
Your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.